A guy in Australia, that was it, it was Australia. And he called and he said, why don't you do a one-man show? And I said, a one-man show? Big deal. Holding an audience for an hour and a half, 2 hours alone, I mean, that's a big deal. Yeah, and he said, yeah, but it's Australia, and if you fail, nobody will know. So I went to Australia, and there was a guy, a celebrity guy in Australia, and he asked me questions, and I told stories, and it was fun. It got good notices, and I toured Australia like that with another man on the stage. In fact, I had some really interesting experiences. Got to New Zealand, and there was a spiritual singer, and suddenly had this bomb, and there was a magic happening, and I did Waltzing Matilda, like it was incredible. So then Canada said, would I do a one-man show? So then I toured Canada with another guy, asking me questions, and I would ramble on. And then Broadway, a producer on Broadway, said we'd like to bring the show to Broadway. So I rewrote the show and I restaged it, and I did without the other guy. And I thought, why don't I use a chair with wheels on it, and use the chair as a foil, and make it all it became a horse, and it became my father, and it became a loved one. I danced with it. It went very well. So I opened it in New York. And at the opening in New York, we went right from Toronto to New York, and I hadn't done the new show in front of anybody. And I had rehearsed it once in this theater in New York, and even a little aside, I had been in a Broadway play many years earlier in that theater, and there were times I'd come back to New York because I was always being asked to do a play in New York, but they wanted so much time, I couldn't give them that amount of time to do the play. So as the years went by, I kept thinking, well, I guess I'll never get back to New York and Broadway. We opened the one-man show in that theater that I had left so many years prior. So the night before opening on Broadway, a friend of mine, my wife and I, were having dinner. And I said, no, they were ordering fish. And I said, no, I better not eat any fish. Tomorrow night, I gotta, this is New York, maybe the fish will be bad, Maybe a waiter will have his thumb in the pepper. No, I'm gonna stick to a plain, ordinary hamburger. I'll just have a hamburger. And that's what all. Next day I woke up, I was so sick. Everybody else was fine, I was sick. Broadway opening by myself on stage. I had been, later on, I'm jumping timelines now, but the time and space is what we deal in, isn't it? So, weeks later, months later, I'm at the Pantages Theater in Los Angeles, which seats 3,500 people. I'm there to hear an oratorio by I don't know, Mozart. And there's a chorale group. 1,500 people are on the stage to sing this oratorio. There's 250 musicians. That's about 2,000 people are on stage. There's 3,500 people in the audience, okay? And I'm in the audience watching these 2,000. 2 or 3 weeks later, I walk on stage, I'm alone. I'm in the place where 2,000 people had been, and I'm alone. That's what it's like to be alone in front of an audience. Can you hold them here? So now I'm on Broadway, I'm about to open, and I'm sick. A kind of sickness where you don't want to leave the toilet. I don't mind coughing, or a slight heart attack would have been okay. But the whole toilet thing is really embarrassing to the point where I had to say, excuse me, there's been a technical difficulty, I'll be right back, and I did. Broadway opening. Anyway, get great notices, and I run for a long length of time I'm supposed to be there, and then I tour the cities. I come to St. Louis, and successful people stand and applaud. Some people didn't, and people down like you didn't. But I didn't see them because the lights were blinding me. It was a terrific tour, and in that tour, I made a movie of it. I did 2 performances, had about 8 cameras in each, 16 angles all over the place. And that movie plays in a St. Louis, in several theaters in the St. Louis area, April 24th. So, ShatnersWorldCinema.com, and you'll find out how it all works. It should be it's a unique event. The movie of the Shatner's World playing at select theaters all across the country, one night only. So it's a magical event for me, so I'm anxious that people go and see it. Okay, so, goodbye. No, here's what we'll do. I will stand in front of you and try and not make a complete idiot of myself, okay? And you will ask me questions, and I will try to give you answers that may or not be true, but maybe we'll have some information or a laugh or two or something like that. And I'll sit here for a moment, then I'll wander over there, then I'll wander over there, and then I'll look up into the sky. Look at that, that's wonderful. Oh, hi. Okay, so are we prepared to ask a question? Like, well, yeah, I know you are, but I mean, is there a microphone set up?
Yeah, there's 2.
Right. Oh, perfect. Got it. What are you doing here? Okay, go.
Welcome back to St. Louis, Mr. Shatner.
Thank you. I wanted to get to eat the barbecue here today. I never didn't have.
Also try the toasted raviolis. You want to get those?
The raviolis.
Toasted raviolis.
You get on an airplane. Where do you get the ravioli?
Toasted raviolis on the hill. Any restaurant on there. The Italian restaurants have them. You are more than welcome to get them.
Well, what about Sammy's, Danny's, Puppies?
Puppies, that's barbecue.
Is it on the way to the airport? Can I stop off and get something?
You tell the cab to take you there, they'll take you there.
Really?
My question for you, though,
Yes. My question for you is: the barbecue for St. Louis better than the one in Kansas City? Of course. But is it sweeter? Is that the idea? Is it sweeter? Is it better?
Of course it's better.
That wasn't unified. This was not a unified answer. Go ahead, what's your question?
Actually, I want to ask you about Third Rock from the Sun. What was the most enjoyable part you had playing the big giant head?
Is he like the greatest actor? Or, is he like wonderful?
Well, me?
What?
You talking about me?
I'm talking about
Big giant head.
John Lithgow.
He's great.
No, John Lithgow is like one of the great actors, and I've admired him for so long. He played Broadway musicals. He's kind of like a great singing voice, and he's this tall, that's why they call him Lithgow. And or is it Life? Maybe it's Lithgow. We don't know. He's not here to answer the questions. We don't know. It could be John Life, the Lithgow. We don't know. Great actor. So I loved him. I loved being with him. The best moment on that show. What's the name of the wrestler? The girl that was on that show? No, there was a big China. She was. You can talk about how long it ran and all those wonderful actors, but China. Then there was an April Fool's joke that John insisted that we play on April 1st. Somehow I was there at the studio filming on April 1st, and he said, let's do an April 1st joke. We come in arguing. Come into the stage like, no, I'm not going. John, that's the worst idea I've ever had. I gotta get off this lousy show. And you notice how quiet you were? That's how quiet the executives were. The joke fell absolutely flat. Everybody went running for their phones, saying Lithgow and Shatner are fighting. That's all I knew. And George Takei was just having a great time. Rubbing his hands. What else do you want to know?
We got plenty of other people who want to ask me questions. Welcome to St. Louis, try the T-Rex.
Thanks. Next question.
Oh, sorry. One, I want to thank you for coming, and it was nice to meet you when I got your autograph yesterday, and it was great. It was good. It was nice of you to come. And can I say something? I don't know why I keep saying
You can say as many times
Okay.
as you want.
Anyway,
Say See, what does is gives you time to think.
One second. Funny thing. Funny thing, I was actually reading your Up Till Now book. Wow, I was waiting for the panel to start.
How old are you?
12. It was very good. The tribute to your wife was nice. Anyway,
You're a smart aleck kid, aren't you? What's your name?
Jordan.
What?
Jordan.
Jordan. You're gonna have to cross a river very soon. What's your question, Jordan?
Two questions are one, if they did include you in Star Trek 2009, which I remember you mentioned, the one a few years ago, and you were in charge, and you were in charge of writing the story of how you were alive again, what would you do? Would you make your book the canon?
That's a great question, Jordan. Thank you so much for asking. Well, Leonard Nimoy plays Spock.
Yeah.
So I said to Leonard, because I thought they kind of shot Spock in that movie, got him in. And I said to Leonard, you know when you're old, when you go back in time, and you're still old. They didn't have to use old age makeup on him. He was just. So the question was, see, I played. You're 12.
Yeah.
I've got ties older than you. That's the oldest joke in the world, man. Okay. I haven't changed my socks in 12 years. No, that's bad. Okay. So many years ago, I played the part of Captain Kirk.
And I know you did his death scene in Star Trek Generations, which not many fans are happy with. That's not getting one.
Jordan, when you come to an Okay, so here's what happened. Okay? Now, Jordan, you have to be quiet just for a moment. So, on that Star Trek movie, I think it was 6, the producers said, we're going to kill Captain Kirk. Will you stop laughing a moment so I can hear you? Try Trek 7. You're wrong. It's 6, okay? I do it all along. Smart on a kid. Thing is, he's getting the better of all this, and that's not so good. So the producers said, we're going to kill Captain Kirk, and I said, kill Captain Kirk? That's the worst news I've ever had. They said, well, do you want to be part of it? And I said, yes. So I had to die. The character had to die. What are you doing, Jordan? Are you listening, or are you trying to be smart?
I was nodding my head in the
Okay, I'm going to give you an answer to your question. Okay? Just be quiet, be patient. Sit down, attaboy, rest. There you go. Lie down, Jordan. Lie down. There you go. Okay. So when I got the script and the character dies, I started writing a book about how the character lives. And by the time I died, I handed the book, the outline of the book, to the producers, saying, here's how I could come back to life. But they had a better idea, which was to put the next generation into the movies because our box office was always about $100 million. Every time the movie went out, we made $100 million. That was it. Like a limited number of people came to see the movies. So they knew if they could make the movies for $30 million, they would make a profit at $100 million, but it never got better than $100 million. So I wrote a book, which I called The Return, in which I came back to life. So I had a whole plot ready, and I literally died, and then I got up out of the scene, and I said to the producer who I knew was doing the movies, here's a way of bringing me back to life. Well, they didn't want to bring me back to life. They were done. That was it. And so the book was published, and it was fairly successful, but that was my idea, that Spock finds my spirit and brings me back to life. That was how it was going to happen. Jordan, your moment in the sun is over. Jordan, no, Jordan, you have to accept the fact. That's it. Listen. And children, the same thing. Yeah, the same thing. You know, I brought up 3 girls and now grandchildren whom I can't bring up enough. They just, their mothers and fathers are very protective. But puppies, I have puppies. So my wife Elizabeth and I bred our old dog to a Doberman bitch, excuse me, and we had a litter of puppies in Texas, and then Elizabeth and I flew to Texas and picked out 2 female puppies, and they were 8 weeks old. We rented a car and drove from Austin, Texas to Los Angeles with 2 little puppies in the back. It took us 3 days. And the adventures on that. I mean, you know, they have rest areas on the freeways. And is that Jordan? And they have rest areas, and every rest area has its own character. And with puppies, they gotta go all the time. So we stopped at rest areas, and they were awful. I mean, they had cactus in the grass, so the puppies couldn't walk. Or they had strange vegetables that they would eat. They even had a sign. They were running around, and there was a sign, "Beware of rattlesnakes." I mean, it was just awful. Where we could take them. Finally, we got the puppies home, and about 3 months into it, one of the puppies got ill, and so ill that we tried everything medically to try and save her. We couldn't save her. So Mocha died about 2 months ago. Espresso lives and is a great puppy. But the puppies, like children, I think, you need to be stern with love, not stern, but firm with love. But there's a lot of hands-on with puppies. No, sit down, baby, calm down. And you're using loving hands on them. So I think verbally, you can use verbal loving hands on children. Firm, sit down, children, lie down. Next question.
What's it like being what's it like being the actor who plays James Tiberius Kirk?
It's terrific. Chris Hadfield is the Canadian astronaut who flew in one of the missions just the last few months. So he calls me, or his representatives, would I like to talk to him while he's crossing Los Angeles I don't think he was in the shuttle. What was he? What was it? Space station. He was in the space station. So he was in the space station, and he had about a 10-minute window from when the antenna could pick him up until he crossed over the Los Angeles. So they asked me if I would like to interview him, because I've been doing a number of interviews of late. I love to talk to people and find out what they're like and who their lives are and who people are. So I've been doing a number of that. I did a series called Raw Nerve, and I thank you. And I talked to people and it's a marvelous experience. And then I've been doing something I call brown bag wine tasting, which I walk around with a bottle of wine and have a conversation with someone. Here, have a sip of wine. So I'm a man on the street and just having a great time with that. So I'm out there like I know what I'm doing when I'm talking to people. So Chris Hadfield is coming across, and I did a little research on Chris Hadfield, the astronaut. Turns out he's a test pilot, and he loves to think about. He's like a philosophy minor or something in school, but a test pilot. So I didn't want to ask him, how are you, what's happening, what's it like to be floating in space. I said to him as he came over, I said, do you see a plan? Is there a plan out there? Out in the darkness of space, do you see a plan? Well, we began to talk about what he sees, what his faith is, what he's, as a scientist, what he can do as a scientist, what belief system he has. And then I said, as a test pilot, you must have faced fear so often. What do you do when you're afraid? When you're flying straight down, you don't know whether the wings are going to hold or not. What do you do when you're afraid? And as he gave his answers, of course, had 10 minutes and he disappeared. So as a result of that, I'm going to go visit with him in Hawaii in about 4 weeks and be on stage with him and talk with him somewhat like this in Hawaii in about 4 weeks. Yeah, cool. To talk to, we ordinary people have to imagine what it must be like to be sitting in the space shuttle, we're looking up, and there's liquid oxygen and nitrogen underneath you. And there have been accidents, and there have been accidents that shouldn't have been, and there are accidents they didn't know. But their life is on edge the whole time they're up there. Anything could go wrong. Once you're up there, that's half the battle. Now you have to get back. So, that's a direct result of having played the part of Captain Kirk. I'm given the opportunity not only to hear you and speak with you and have the fun of that, but to speak to people like Chris Hadfield, an astronaut who's really finding out things about science that we'll only learn about and use in the years to come. That's how cool being Captain Kirk is. Okay.
Hi.
That's all right.
Don't mind me.
You want to sit down with Jordan?
Oh no, I'm good. Well, I actually have 2 questions.
Well, one will do.
Okay.
You must know Jordan. That's all right, honey. Just take your time.
Well,
Not too much time.
well, I was wondering, I wanted your opinion on the new Star Trek series, the movies and stuff.
Yeah.
I wanted to know, what things do you feel that are okay and stuff?
What do I think of the new movies?
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good question. Thank you for asking it.
Yep.
Okay. Well, let's share, because we're all here because we like science fiction and Star Trek. So let's share what we think about the 2 new movies. You're half a step ahead of me, but that's all right. All right. So, do we like the new movies?
Lens flare.
So how about we don't like the new movies? So most of us like the new movies. What? That's because you're here. You say that to everyone. Okay. So, what don't we like about? We agree that the new movies are really good. I'll tell you how good they are. When they stopped making it with the cast I was belonged to, when we stopped making movies, as I said, we'd spend about $30 million on a movie, and they would gross about $100 million. And that was about the line where the studios thought they were making money, because the rule of thumb is 3 times the cost of the movie brings them into profits. So they were making $10, $20 million a movie. So it was worthwhile for them to make it, but it wasn't blockbuster like Star Wars. So then they thought, well, the next generation cast is popular. Maybe they'll break through there. So then they brought in the next generation cast and made about the same number of movies, I think. And they spent a great deal more money than $30 million, because now the actors knew what the franchise was, how much money Paramount was making, so they all asked for more money, and a number of them got more money. It was great. But it cost more than $30 million. But again, they didn't gross much more than $100 million. So they were losing money on some of those movies. J.J. Abrams, this wonderful director, has found the key to bringing in more than $100 million. And that key is take you on a ride, and special effects, and running and jumping and sliding, and that has brought in a large crowd, so that those of us who like Star Trek can feel that somewhere in the near future there will be another iteration of Star Trek, perhaps as a series. Perhaps they'll wait a while the movies make their way through. I don't know what their plans are, but Star Trek is popular again with another generation. I just sat down with 3 young guys, the Vines, the kids on the Vines. Do you know who I mean? Do any of you don't know who I mean? Yeah, that's most of you. I'm sitting at the table, I don't know who these kids are. But apparently they're more popular than white bread. I mean, it's just, and I said, well, what do they do? They said, well, they make these 6-second things and send them up. So, I mean, that's a whole new area of expertise that I knew nothing about. So the point is, they didn't know who I was, and I didn't know who they were. We were sitting at the same time. No, they didn't know. No, they didn't. It was shocking. So, this is 12-year-old kids. What do you do? But his father knew who I was. And I told his father to tell all those kids nightly who I am. My point being that there's a new milieu. There's a new thing going on that has to do with not watching television, way to go, that Twittering is how you communicate, and I hope one day that, I kept saying to my wife, why don't you pick up the phone and let's hear somebody's voice, you know? I mean, there's a difference between saying hello and hello. There's no meaning. You can't hear the human voice on a Twitter. But on the other hand, I seem to have become king of the Twitters. Don't know that you followed that or not, but so there's a whole different thing going on in the entertainment industry, probably in our culture, that those of us over 12 have got to sort of get with, and those of us over 25 are like stunned. What's going on here? And in order to stay with it, you've got to go with it. So that's what J.J. Abrams is doing with Star Trek, and that's why it's terrific. What I miss, and maybe someday it'll be in there, first of all, I miss the dedication to the discipline of being on board a ship in the middle of nowhere. I mean, there were prescribed rules that you didn't break in Star Trek, and they're being broken, so that's one thing. And the other thing is, I miss the really human story. And I'm sure that J.J. will get to that larger audience, and then bring in the stories that made Star Trek so popular. So that's what I think of the new movie. Next question.
Thank you.
And the new what? New Kirk's a weenie? You said that, I didn't say that. No, he's great. He's tall, handsome, he's rich.
Thank you for the inspiring words about playing Kirk, but my favorite role of yours, hands down, was Denny Crane. I suspect that role was conceived with you in mind from the get-go.
I think he did, yeah. David E. Kelley. The E is important because apparently there's another Kelley somewhere around. Did, and I had breakfast with him and before the thing, and he described what he was writing and he wanted to be in it. And I was so grateful. He is one of the great writers for television that has ever lived. He's had so many hit series, and what he focuses on is story and character. And I'm just so grateful that I had the opportunity to play that role and be with this wonderful cast. James Spader's in another hit series because he is so good, and I was honored to be able to perform with him.
Please tell me you and him are friends in real life, too.
Yes, we are. Why do you ask?
Best barbecue in town is this gal right here.
Oh, I see. No, I love him. He's a great guy. He's a great, wonderful actor and a unique character. He's very fastidious. By that I mean obsessive. His hands are, he's got that clean thing, and there's on movie sets there's a table with food on it all the time, and it isn't that the producers are being so generous; it's to prevent you from going elsewhere if you're hungry to get a sandwich, or if your energy is flagging, then you just go to the table and pick up a donut or a piece of bread or fruit or whatever is on the table. It's called a craft service table. So you find a lot of people hanging around the craft service table, even before and after the meals. James hated to watch anybody eat. So if the craft service table was here and the entrance to the studio was here, he would enter and he'd make a real circle to avoid going by the table. So during one scene, I had to hand him a glass of alcohol, which is cold tea, by the way. And so I took some Vaseline and I smeared it during the tape. And here you go. What luck. He tried to get through it, but he couldn't. But he's a beautiful guy. I'm sorry I'm not working with him. Does that answer your question? You're very welcome. Next question. What? Did he get me back? He probably did. He probably cut some lines out of my. He had an in with David Kelley. He probably said, don't give Shatner that speech, I'll say. What was your question?
Captain Kirk is probably my dad's favorite fictional character of all time. I was raised on Star Trek as well. And he couldn't come today, but he really loved The Return and your other Star Trek books, and he wanted me to ask if you had plans to write any more of those.
Well, I'm sorry, that's sort of gone now. I wrote, 8 books. They allowed me to write Star Trek books, and I based the basic plot on my own life. So whatever tragedies I had, whatever joys I had, I gave to Captain Kirk. Children. I mean, I built it became somewhat autobiographical, the novels I wrote about Captain Kirk, including my evolution into thoughts of what may be in store for us, that sort of thing. I'm an animal lover. I'm a ecologist. I think we're in dire trouble. Anybody in the audience who can pick up just one note of the fact that how much trouble our world is in terms of toxicity of everything, water, air, that we must strive, that technology which got us into this might get us out of it, but it's dire. Just to have that message out there is important. But all the things that very, very important to know that our world is in dire jeopardy. It isn't just, oh boy, we better do something about it. We have got to do something about it, and every voice counts. So make sure that when those things come up that they cost a few pennies more to put a scrubber on a coal stack or not to infect the water table. I mean, you know, it's happening all around us, and we're okay for a while. Those of us over 50. But those of you under 50, you know, your children are going to have a problem. So those books I enjoyed writing, and they allowed me to do it, even though it was against the what was the term they used, against the
Canon.
The canon. That's exactly right. You know, you from Paramount taking against the Star Trek canon.
Plenty of advice for them if they want to call me.
Say that again?
I've got plenty of advice for Paramount if they want to call me.
Oh yeah. Okay. So that was my contribution to the Star Trek legend, those books, after Captain Kirk died in the movies.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Next question.
I know that you're from Canada, so
Yes.
I wanted to know if you actually still knew how to do the I am Canadian speech and would do it for us.
I don't know. I am Canadian, and I memorized it at that time. That was quite a while ago, but it was very funny, and Canada enjoyed it. I did a couple of things that had fun with Canada. That's one of the things I can't do for you, honey. I'm sorry, but what I can do is remember Winnipeg for you, and that is 2 weeks ago. I was making an appearance in Lexington, Kentucky, on a Friday night and a Saturday afternoon. I then got in a private airplane that was lent to me by Bombardier, the Canadian airplane manufacturer. I flew to Fort McMurray, which is 500 miles north of Winnipeg. We landed in Winnipeg to go through customs. It was 30 below zero. And I was in this giant, beautiful plane. And in the cold Winnipeg air, I stepped off this private plane. Talk about luxury. I got stuck in the private plane. It's 30 below zero. The air is crystal clear. The sky is an incredibly pale blue as the sun is beginning to set, and it's gleaming off a wing of this extraordinary airplane. The wing is sort of fashioned in an aerodynamic, elliptical fashion, and the light sparkling off it from the air in this 30 degree below zero, and I'm standing there somewhat like this, and I'm looking at that wing, and I'm in Winnipeg, way north, and I'm going 500 miles further north, and it was all sort of exotic and esoteric, and I'm looking at the wing and the line of the wing. It was so futuristic, this wing of this airplane, gleaming in the sunlight, that it was the future. I'm flying north, the weather, the rain patterns are going north. Canada is the country of the future because the rain's stopping here for a while, by the way, in St. Louis, on their way north in the years to come. And I'm looking into this wing that represents the future in this deserted area called Canada.